Hi everyone and welcome to Training for Life Redeemed. I am your host, Dan. I'm here as always with my father, David Jackson. We're going to continue to talk through the book of Matthew. We've been working on this for a few weeks now. Dad, we're up to chapter 22, and 22 begins with a parable. We actually finished chapter 21 with a parable about how the people who were living in the vineyard, that's the word I'm looking at, the vineyard, are killing the son.
Yep.
Right, that was the last parable. This parable, we have a king who's sending out invites to the people. The people then don't come to the party that's being prepared, and so the king they end up murdering the servants who were sent. So the king sends his soldiers, kills them, and burns their city, and then sends messages out all over the highway to bring everyone in. They all come, and then there's one person who he sees when he arrives, the king, that is not in the right clothes to be there. And so he kicks that guy out, where there's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, the parable ends, verse 14, saying, "For many were called, but few are chosen." So what's going on here? I mean, there's part of this I think I can see where Jesus is kind of telling them that Jerusalem's going to get destroyed and burnt because the Jews aren't going to respond to the invite because they're the original people who invited, killing the servants. Maybe that's Peter, Stephen, prophets, maybe the old prophets too. But there's also servants who are bringing this message, I guess, to come to the party, who they're going to try and just get rid of completely. But then what's going on? This second bit, I think, is a bit more confusing. It's that, why do I have to wear nice clothes? Like, I got the invite, I came, right?
Yeah. Why the big deal? You go to hell for wearing the wrong clothes. This is the last time Jesus speaks publicly, the last record we have of Jesus speaking publicly in the temple. And it's on again, off again, with all the different factions of the Sanhedrin. And the last little round he had, they've all gone off into their little closed meeting, and they're having a meeting to try and plan how to kill him, because he dared to accuse them of trying to kill him. So, we're going to prove our moral worth by doing what he accused us of. So now they've gone away, he's talking to the crowd, and he tells the crowd this parable about a feast. And of course, on Thursday is Passover, so this is Tuesday. On Thursday is Passover, and then on Friday the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts, and it goes for a week. And he's describing that as a royal marriage feast. And in royal marriage feast language, when you invite somebody to a royal feast and you don't turn up, you have rebelled against the king, and the king's going to come and deal with you. So this is, a royal summons, and any disobedience of that is telling the king to go jump. And that's what Jesus is saying. You've told Yahweh to go jump in the lake. He's called you to his feast here in Jerusalem, and you're going to spend that feast killing his anointed king. What do you think he's going to do to you? So he tells it like this story about a wedding feast, and then he's predicting the destruction of the city of Jerusalem, and in 40 years' time that prediction is fulfilled. So he's warning the crowds about this, while the guys that are actually plotting it aren't there. So great scene. But this guy with the clothes, when you proclaim a feast, a wedding feast or a royal feast, these things went on for a week. We have a record of Solomon doing a feast for 14 days when he opened the temple, killing tens of thousands of animals. He's feeding the whole country for a party for a fortnight with wine and meat and everything else. They also provided party clothes, because you didn't want it to be an inconvenience, come to our wedding and then worry about what you're going to wear. The king provides you with party clothes. And if you turn up and you go, no, I'm not wearing that, out you go.
Yeah.
That's really offensive, disrespectful. But then you've got to ask yourself the question, what's that about in the big picture? And the answer is, you flip over to Revelation 19.
And you're clothed with Christ.
And you're clothed with Christ. You know, there's the marriage supper of the Lamb on the last day, and we're all there, and the only thing I tell the kids this: the only thing you're wearing at that marriage feast is your righteousness. There's a scary thought, but that's okay. You'll be better looking than I am right now, which is hard to imagine, but we'll get there.
Yeah, right.
But there you are. I mean, you're clothed with the righteousness that Christ has given you, and you've said, no, I'm going to bring my own.
Yeah.
So out you go.
Okay. So this then leads us into 3 questions that are presented to Jesus by 3 different groups, essentially, and then Jesus presents one back. So the first question is, should we pay taxes, which is the Pharisees. They obviously aren't into paying taxes, although they benefit from the taxes.
Yeah.
So Jesus pulls out a coin. You got a bunch of coins here for us if you happen to be watching this on YouTube. So the coin has imprints on it. I mean, even our coin in Australia, we have the Queen's head on all of it, even though it's not the current Queen. But, so Jesus just says, well, whose image is it? And therefore you give that back to Caesar because it's got his image on it. And then I would imagine the flip side of that is that we are the image of God. And therefore, we're what's given back to God. Yeah. Show your coin, get up close.
There's a real... you can get the notes off the website or buy the book. There's a photograph of it there. This is a denarius from the days of Domitian. If you're an Australian, that's a 5-cent piece, and that's a denarius.
Yeah, it's about half the size.
About half the size. But the trick is, it doesn't just have his head on it, it says he's a god. So he is the divine Augustus, son of the divine Augustus. So it's an idol. And the joke is, this tax is imposed by the Romans on people who live in Judea. People in Galilee don't have to pay it. Okay, so because Galilee's run by somebody else, whereas Judea is a Roman-occupied place run by a Roman governor. So they charge you a denarius a year to pay for the Roman governance. So they're asking a guy from Galilee who doesn't have to pay the tax to tell the people of Judea they have to give the money to Caesar. Now that's a question designed to offend everybody.
Yeah.
Right? If you say no, the Romans will come and arrest you for treason. If you say yes, the crowds are going to go boo and walk away from you. So they think they've got him. And he says, bring me a coin. And of course the big joke is, what are you doing with a coin? It's an idol, and you're and you're producing it. Well, you go and give that to whoever's image is on it, and give to God what we owe him.
Yeah.
And so everybody now goes, oh, that didn't work. And they scamper away.
So that brings in our next group then.
And the next group
next group are the Sadducees, who, for those who are listening at home, the Sadducees don't believe in a resurrection. They generally only follow the first 4.5 to 5 books of the Bible.
They only follow Genesis to Deuteronomy.
Yeah. And so they're bringing a question to Jesus about, if there is this resurrection, the law says, if my brother dies, I have to marry his wife. Then if I die, my other brother has to marry the same wife until she gets kids. And if we all marry her, and there's 12 of us or however many there are, and none of us give her kids, whose wife is she at the resurrection?
Yeah. So the rabbis call this a vulgar question. They got a special word for this kind of method of debate, right?
Yeah.
It's a mockery. I mean, if they came along and they were serious, they'd say, I've got one brother who died, and then the next brother marries the same woman, and she doesn't have any kids, so whose wife is she? That might sound like a sensible question. But to pass a woman through 7 brothers is absurd, and it's mockery.
Yeah.
And Jesus knows it's mockery. And so the reply is, he makes them look as stupid as their question.
Yeah.
So here are a bunch of guys who don't believe anything past Genesis to Deuteronomy. So all the history, the wisdom, the prophets, they reject.
Tamar.
But they don't believe. They don't believe the Book of Ruth. Yeah. They don't believe in angels. They don't believe in resurrection. They're for this world only. They're out to make a buck, and they're as corrupt as all get out. And they collaborate with the Romans, and they're going to mock Jesus. And Jesus turns around and said, haven't you read the rest of the scriptures? Well, of course they haven't. We'll be like the angels that you don't believe in. And off they skedaddle. You want to mock me? you're going to look as stupid as you are. And that's the foolishness of unbelief.
Yeah.
It doesn't do well to mock. God will not be mocked.
So then our next group, so we had the Pharisees come, sent away, Sadducees have come, no good. We then have essentially like their professor, their scribes, right? Their academics come in.
Bring in
It's
the
like,
big
we've
guns.
lost, let's go back to the Sanhedrin. Who's the smartest
Where's
one?
the professor of Old Testament?
You're the one who does this. Come out here. And they just come out. It's a fairly simple question, really. Like, what is the greatest commandment? There aren't that many to pick from. But that's all there are. Like, it doesn't look like he's trying to, like, they're trapping him necessarily.
Yeah, but see, in the rabbinic school, you've got this big debate going on as to which are the important commandments you have to keep, and which are the ones they're not so important. I mean, to be quite honest, evangelicals do exactly the same thing. Is it central to the gospel? If it's not central to the gospel, well, it doesn't matter. The fact that Jesus commands it or whatever, no, it doesn't matter. As long as it's not central to how I get saved, we don't care. Well, the rabbis did the same thing. And so here is an academic question from a lawyer asking, what's the most important commandment? And the assumption behind that is, well, if I can nail down what the important commandment is, I can let go of the rest. And Jesus does this really cute thing. The two great commandments, love the Lord your God, love your neighbour as yourself, he says, all the other ones hang off that. And so what you've got is this beautiful picture. Here are the two hinges on the door. And in their theology, their way of looking at the law, you put the two hinges up and you throw the door away. And he says, on them hang every other commandment. You can't separate any of it. You've got to either love the Lord your God, whole package, or you offend him, whole package. We're not picking the eyes out of this thing. And of course, I mean, this is the great professor of theology thing. And they've sent, the professor of theology has actually sent one of his senior students to ask the question, so it doesn't look like he's bullying him. Here, go and ask him that question. And he comes back with his tail between his legs. So Jesus comes back and he asks this guy to go back and ask them another question. Yeah. And that's a beauty.
Yeah. So the question goes back that it's nice. Jesus, I've done your three, right? You've had 3 shots at it. Here's one. Yeah. Here's one for you. And the question is basically around how can the Christ be the son of David when David calls him Lord?
Yes.
Right? Because you don't call someone Lord unless they're actually superior to you.
So one of the great problems we have with the Old Testament for people to understand is that in the Old Testament you have Yahweh talk to Yahweh. So you come across, I mean, the New Testament it's explained a bit more fully where the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, we get all that stuff together. But in the Old Testament, it's the same thing is happening, the same God is there. And he talks to, one person talks to another person, the glory of the Lord is there, and the glory of the Lord talks to God and then speaks as God. All of this is happening in the Old Testament. And these guys, they can't figure out Jesus, let alone the Trinity. And Jesus just smiles and says, well, you go and figure out this little passage from Psalm 110 and come back and give me your answer. You want to get tricky, hard Bible questions, I've got one for you. There you go.
Yeah, explain the Trinity to me that I haven't explained to you.
Yeah, off you go. You haven't even thought about this, have you? The fact that, hey, wait a minute, I am Yahweh. Yeah. You're talking to Yahweh and you're asking him theological questions. There you go. Go and figure that one out.
Yeah. I mean, look, if their motives were different, yes, you should go to Yahweh and ask him as many theological questions as you have. And he's got the answers, right?
And here you are with the whole scriptures and the whole history of Israel, and we've come to the crisis of everything God has promised. We're standing in the temple. We are 2 days away from arresting Jesus, 3 days away from the crucifixion, when all of this stuff is going to get fulfilled, and you're playing silly guys. And looming in the distance, in one generation, 40 years, we're going to wipe this place off the face of the earth because you are about to murder the Christ.
Well, now that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you guys so much for coming along and listening. If you want to grab the study notes to go along with this episode and see the pictures of a denarius coin and all that kind of stuff, please come to trainingforliferedeemed.com/79. 79. Good. You'll grab the study notes there. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and come back and join us next week when we head into chapter 23.